Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm going to show you how to get a Halsey or Zedd type vocoder effect inside of Ableton Live 10. Before we begin, just a quick reminder to leave a like down below and hit that subscribe button. This will help me continue to bring valuable content to awesome viewers like you. So I went ahead and put together a vocal and a chord progression for you guys, and we'll go ahead and have a listen to that and see what it sounds like without the vocoded version. I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, I'm trapped inside, please let me out. You are gone, but I'm still here, left alone with all my fears. Now I had to do quite a bit of processing to get my voice sounding halfway decent, and if you guys would be interested in a tutorial on how I did that, just let me know in the comments. Now let's go ahead and play this with the vocoded signal added. I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, I'm trapped inside, please let me out. You are gone, but I'm still here, left alone with all my fears. Now what I'm going to do is just walk through the steps that I took to get this vocoder sounding decent and show you guys how to get it all set up so that way you can do the same for your vocals. The first thing you're going to want to do is duplicate your original vocal track, and then you're going to want to remove all the effects that you had on there, and then we're going to go ahead and add our vocoder in. Now before our vocals actually get vocoded, we're going to need what's called a carrier. And to set that up, the first thing we do is we need to create the carrier itself. So I already have one here, but I'm just going to pretend that I don't and create a new MIDI track. And we're going to load up Serum or any synth that contains a saw wave, which is probably like every synth. Now, to get a good sound out of a vocoder, you want a really full carrier. In other words, you want a really full sound source. So saw waves work really good for this because they fill up the entire spectrum. And I also like to have two of them going at once. One that is one octave up, and then one is just one octave below that. Next thing we're going to do is turn this one's level down just a little bit, probably to about there. Because I noticed that if you have too much of this lower octave, then it tends to be a little more subby, at least for me, than I liked. Another thing I like to do for the carrier is add some stereo width. So we're going to come in with our hyper dimension. We're going to turn the hyper mix all the way down, turn the dimension size all the way down, turn it on, of course, and turn our mix knob to about 2/3. This just adds some nice stereo width to your vocoded signal, and it really kind of, I don't know, just gives it a little nice ambience. And that's it for what we want to do in our synth. The next thing you're going to need is your MIDI. So you could pretty much take your main chord progression, whether that's a triad or whatever, and you can just duplicate that onto your synth track. Now I've noticed that triads seem to work well for this purpose, so I'm going to go ahead and boil all these down to triads. Okay, now that you have your MIDI set up, what you're going to do is come over to your vocoder, and you will want to change the carrier to external. Now we're going to come in with our Serum, which I might as well rename this Carrier 2. I'm going to rename this to Vocoded 2. All right. Now we want our Carrier 2 signal to come into our vocoder, and we theoretically should have something happening. But you will actually want to deactivate the Carrier 2 because it will send the signal of the synth to this vocoder, but you don't actually want to hear the synth at the same time. Otherwise, I'll just show you what happens. Yeah, pretty terrible. So
I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I'm trapped inside, please let me.
Now, the first thing I notice is that this is far too loud, so we're going to turn that down.
I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I'm breathing in.
Now, the next thing I did, because I really want the volume level of my vocoder to be nice and consistent, is I took a glue compressor and put it before the vocoder. You can go ahead and set the release to auto, and the attack, you can leave it at 1 and the ratio at 4. We're going to go ahead and bring this down quite a bit.
I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I'm trapped inside, please let me out. You are.
Let me just turn that off.
I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I'm trapped inside, please let me out. You are gone, but I'm still here. Left to.
Next thing we're going to want to do is bring this lower range up to about 140. And we're going to change the bands to 28. With the band setting, I notice if you go too high, everything starts to sound too washy and wet. But if you go too low, everything starts to sound more like you're just playing a synth. So 28 seemed to be a good happy medium for me at least. The next thing we're going to do is click this button and it will turn the filter behavior to retro. I just found the retro to sound a lot better than the precise filter behavior. The next thing we're going to do is turn the depth down to 80%. I noticed this helps a little bit with that washiness I was mentioning earlier. And the next thing you're going to want to do is adjust your gate. A good way to adjust your gate if there's any kind of background noise in your vocal is to just play a snippet that more or less just contains that background noise and bring it up until that goes away. Let me just turn this off. You'll want to give it a few extra dB above where that noise sits. Now the last thing I like to do is bring this format down to -2. This is more personal preference, but I just find that when I bring this down to -2, it suits my voice a lot better and gives that really, I don't know, throaty vocoded sound that I look for whenever I am trying to vocode something. And after all that, let's go ahead and have a listen.
I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I'm trapped inside, please let me out.
Now, the last thing I like to do is add an EQ after that. And I like to use both a high and a low cut. Set the low cut around 115 hertz and the low cut around just over 3 kilohertz. I also used a bell filter cutting a few dB around 350 hertz. This just helps more or less get rid of some boxiness that I noticed. The hardest part about vocoding for me, I've noticed, is to get it sound more like a smooth playing instrument instead of something that's like, I don't know, being washed around in a sink. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but it just takes a lot of finicking with, and your voice may react differently. So don't be afraid to just play around with the different settings I mentioned. Now let's go ahead and have a listen to what we got.
I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I'm trapped inside, please let me out.
I'm going to see how this sounds compared to the other one I created.
I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I'm trapped inside. I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I'm trapped inside, please let me out.
It's really close. It's a little bit quieter, but aside from that, it's really close.
I'm breathing in, I'm breathing in.
Now I'm just going to play this with the original vocal and see if I can get this leveled out.
I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out.
I'm trapped inside, please let me out. You are gone, but I'm still here, left alone with all my fears. I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, I'm trapped inside. Okay, we've got it sounding pretty darn close to the original one that I had created. I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, I'm trapped inside, please let me out. That is the new one we just created, and this is the original. I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, I'm trapped inside, please let me out. You are... That about sums up this video. I hope you guys learned something, and if you have any questions about one subject or another, just let me know in the comments below. I hope you guys can make it back for the next video. Until then, have an amazing day.